Alright, we're back. So, yeah, continuing off from where I was, I want to go back on this. So it said, according to research, the large-scale death of indigenous populations in the Americas during European colonization led to a cooling effect on the Earth's climate. Okay, they called it the Little Ice Age, and they're saying how European colonization of Americas killed so many, it cooled Earth's climate. So there you go. Like it says, colonization of the Americas at the end of the 15th century killed so many people it disturbed Earth's climate. And they were trying to say, oh, it's because of the diseases. And it wasn't just the diseases, man. No, they brought those as well because there's nasty ass fucking motherfuckers, right? But it wasn't just that. All right, it was also because they were killing people. You know what percentage? Look. Try, and these motherfuckers always try to go and filibuster their way out. What percentage of natives died? They don't like to see. They don't like to bring that one up because they said it was like 90%. All right, they killed over 56 million indigenous. Look that up. That's more than those the people with the tiny little hats. All right, that the ones that can't be really named. Let's see. The low estimate is 20,000. It wasn't 20,000, man. See, they try to. The number of natives who died by the massacre was far less than 1% of the total population. So, again, and it was probably, like it says, climate changed after Europeans killed 90% of the indigenous population. It says, European colonizers killed so many indigenous Americans that the planet cooled down, a group of researchers concluded. It says, following Christopher Columbus's arrival in North America in 1492, violence and disease killed 90% of the indigenous population, nearly 55 million people, according to a study published this year. So, how many people in the world in 1492? How many people in the world in 1492? The population of America was estimated around 60 million people. So there was around 60 million people in the Americas, and they killed 55 million people. So that they only left 5 million left. Damn. So it says they basically killed almost everybody. So almost, you might say all over the world, but guess what? They killed almost 100% of the population off in America. Okay. So said multiply Indian populations at their lowest levels by 20 or 25. Others estimate that the most densely populated region was the Mexican Valley. They just try to, see, historical estimates of world population. Let's go in here and see if we can get 1490. Let's see. $374 million, so it's a good chunk. So if there was 374, math. If there was 374 million people and 50. How many was it? Let me see. How many natives were killed? They say it was. They say 4 million. It was a higher number than that. It wasn't 56 million. They try to say, oh, it's 4 million. No, 56 million. All right. 56. God damn it! Why did it block out? Why did it erase everything? If 56 Come on. People died and the population was 356 million. What percentage died? Come on, man. We don't need all the math. Yeah, the number of the number of that means 15.73% of the population died. See, they're trying to make it seem like it was nothing. It was. See, the population, there was actually more people that died. Okay, they say it would have been less than 1%. It says right here 15, 50, almost 16. Round it up. It's above 1550. Right, so it's 15.73. So you might as well just round that up to 16%. Right, 16% approximately 16% of the population died. It was less than 1%. So let's go back. Let's go back now. All right. And so what was it? Let me make sure my dates was accurate. 1400 was 350. So that was 356. All right, and 350. I give it 356. So that's the low. The median high is 374. So anywhere from anywhere down to at least 10% of the population, right? So it says diseases like smallpox, measles, influenza, which colonizers brought to Americas were responsible for many millions of deaths. It says the following research also reveals that following this rapid population decline and the subsequent reduction in land use, there was a global cooling. So man, these devils try to, they try to lie their way out. Okay, so look, and then these people try to go on and say, let's see what this guy's trying to say to make slavery sound a little bit better. He says the Mongols killed 10% of the human race in 25 years and captured untold millions into slavery over their history. So we're already on the same level to 10 to 15% of the world population being killed off. Gotcha. That's 10% of every man and child on earth. Gotcha. Same thing. They turned India into the most prolific slave state in history. Cool. Yeah. Well, everybody. What does everybody think? When you think of slavery? What does people think about? Are they thinking about India? No. Single campaign, they would take over 100,000 slaves. There was a shit ton of slaves in America. What are you talking about? They killed 1 to 2 million people in 48 hours. Okay, that's impressive. The war crimes they committed would make the Confederates blush. They did this for hundreds of years. So yeah, they were worse. It says, and this guy come back, he got down with us a second, except slavery in any part of the history wasn't as bad as it was in the States. In most times, most slaves would be compared to factory workers before unions, with some hope from release from servitude. In other terms, they were part of the workforce for the most part. The blacks in the South, property, and that is absolutely true because if you look into those historical things, when you were considered if you were taken captive as a slave, generally you would have different things, and generally they would hold you for a time being. You had chances for release. You were also able to buy your freedom out if you were able to get the coin. You were also able to leave, all right, for the most part, as a slave and do certain things. Like the Roman slaves, it was actually said that let's go and look that up. It was actually in one of the Roman slaves. Let's go to Chat GPT again. Roman writings that spoke of a man stating that they should make slaves wear the same colored garments, and the person they suggested it to saying that if they did that, the slaves would see that they outnumber their rulers. Seneca. Yep. Says, Seneca discusses various aspects of societal and moral issues. One relevant passage is where he recounts a conversation about use of clothing to mark social status. The suggestion was made that if slaves were required to wear distinctive clothing, that they might realize their number compared to their masters, and it could lead to unrest. All right, and that's the thing. And it wasn't just about unrest. It's also because, and why would they have colors? Because you could not differentiate between a free man and a slave back then. Okay, you could differentiate in this. Slavery was way different back in the day. Okay, that's even in the Bible. There's rules for taking a Hebrew servant. Okay, there are rules behind it. Okay, the way that Esau did it is not like any nation ever did slaves. Okay, so nice try, you fucking retard. That's the thing. You don't understand history. These people that come over here and try to talk history, they don't understand history. They'll say, well, they were slaves, they were slaves. You don't realize that slavery was a lot different before the transatlantic slave trade. All right, it was a lot different of a thing. Okay, slaves were handled different. Slaves could go to and fro. It's like, look at the prison system in America and then look at it in Norway. Prisoners in Norway, same thing. Slaves, prisoner, right? But the prisoners in Norway, they can leave, all right, their cell. All right, they got TVs, video game systems. You can get all that stuff. And guess what? You know what? There's no fights. People serve their bid and then they leave. Okay? They serve their bid and then they leave. Okay? And there's no fights generally. There's no murders. All right? There's no one getting raped in prison. Right? But over in America, you can't leave. There's killing people, stabbing you with a toothpick, peeling your face off, all sorts of shit, you know? And this guy got downvoted for what he's saying being true. Except slavery in any part of history wasn't as bad in any part of history, right? Wasn't as bad as it was in the States. And most times, most slaves would have been compared to factory workers before unions, with some hope of release for servitude. In other terms, they were part of the workforce for the most part. The blacks in the South, property, so-called black, right? And that's the other thing. If you know anything about medieval history, or if you've played any of those medieval history simulations, a lot of the time slaves would also be used as a bargaining chip, kind of how the way of prisoners of war are used now. They say, hey, look, we want those guys that you captured of ours. All right, we captured these guys. They're now our slave. They're now our prisoner. All right, we're employing him to work for us unless you want to free some of our captives. All right, and we can make a trade. Okay, or I want this from you, and then I'll free this person. They wouldn't like that in this transatlantic slave trade. Okay. It says, and no, they did that for a scant few decades. They kept their possessions for some time after that. The Mongols did, but a lot of it was possible because of Russia, as Russia has never invented anything, never innovated or built anything himself. So too was he back in the day, focusing on tormenting trappers, fishermen, and other honest people of the north. So they would at least have some money to buy from us that which they could not steal, mainly weapons for aforementioned torment. So it's not a surprise that the Mongols handed the Russians their asses, and kept things nice and smooth after that for some time. Overlords, the Mongols were highly beneficial. They only got aggressive if people insisted about their self-determination, and even then, it took some provocation indeed to get them worked out. It says the Confederates didn't conquer slaves. They pretty much did. The Confederates didn't kill. Well, they're trying to use the Confederacy. Let's throw away the Confederacy and let's talk about white people, Edomites. All right, throw away the Confederacy. All right, the Confederacy is just one part. They were trying to keep slavery around, but they're not the ones that implemented slavery. All right, that was just the white man in himself. So let's change Confederacy to the white man and see who was worse, the Mongols or the white man. The Confederates, the white man didn't conquer slaves. Yes, he did. Let's just say Edomites. The Edomites didn't conquer slaves. Yes, they did. The Edomites didn't kill 10% of the human race. Yes, they did. The Confederates didn't boil people alive and then poured congealed boiling fat on torture victims. I'm sure Esau has done something like that, but if not, they've done other things, such as buck breaking, motherfucking. What else have they done? The African Dodger. What else? Feeding little babies to alligators. What else? Hung, drawn, and quartered. Dragging slaves behind horses. What else we got? Lynchings, whippings, all sorts of things. The decapitations. All right, burning people alive. All right, so yes, they did. It says the white people didn't take millions of slaves from Europe, China, India, and the Middle East. They at some point in time they did, but they did something along those lines, but it was always worse towards the Hebrews. Okay, it says they never wiped out entire cities, man, women, and children. Uh, what about Black Wall Street? What about all these other list of black towns that were destroyed? Rosewood, Florida, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Seneca Village, the Memphis Massacre, uh, Opelousas, Louisiana, and that's just some of them. There's more. And you know what? For all those nice once black towns, we sure have a nice, beautiful lake underneath them now. All right, and that's where those towns went because they turned them into lakes. All right, what else? And we can keep going down. The Confederates didn't trample people with horses for days for fun. You're right. They didn't. What they did was they would take the legs, all right, and the arms of a slave, and they do hung, drawn, and quartered. Look that sick shit up. They would do that, or they drag him behind. All right, it says, and so no, it says, are you high? How do you think the Confederates were worse? And this guy, he's an Edomite, and I don't even have to know who he is to know he's an Edomite. All right, or he's a retard of some other nation. But let's get Second Maccabees 7:31. Let's go and get it. All right, Second Maccabees 7:31, and thou that hast been the author of all mischief against the Hebrews shall not escape the hands of Yahweh. So guess what, man? Keep lying and filibustering your way out. I've been saying what we did wasn't that bad, because guess what? The Lord's going to pay you back. You can escape from your little persecution that you think you're getting here now, all right, but you're not going to be able to escape from the Lord, man. Now just look at some of these slave codes, man. I had these up because I was looking at and a slave. That's part of the slave code was that what do they call it? The something killing act, all right, the lawful killing act or whatever it was. Okay, the what was it called? The casual killing act. Okay, let's look at some slave codes. Okay, movement restrictions. All right, most regions required any slaves outside of their plantations or outside of the cities to reside. Uh, uh, Required any slaves from their plantations or outside of the city they resided in to have a pass signed by their master. So if you were even gonna get out a little bit to anything, and you're probably gonna be picking up hay or something for the master, then you'd have to have a pass signed. Okay. Slave tags, small copper badges that show that they were allowed to move about. Marriage restrictions. All right, most places restricted the marriage rights of enslaved people, ostensibly to prevent them from trying to change matters by marrying into a family on another plantation. Prohibitions on gathering. Slave code generally prevented large groups of enslaved people from gathering away from their plantations because they don't want Jake to rebel. Slave patrols, trade and commerce by slaves, punishment and killing of slaves, education restrictions. Some codes made it illegal to teach slaves how to read. All right, there's a whole bunch, man. There's a whole bunch. Okay, so nice try, E, but you try to make it seem everything just sound like it was so much better, and that really they didn't have it all that bad at all. Fucking demons. You're a bunch of demons, man. And the Most High, hey, let's get it again. 2 Maccabees 7:31. And thou that hast been the author of all mischief against the Hebrews shall not escape the hands of Yahweh. And y'all should be, shall not escape the hands of Yahweh. And y'all should be really afraid because Yahweh is sending his son Yahushai back. And he's a Hebrew. So think about that, man. Think about, here it was. You've been torturing this man's people. And he's an extremely powerful being. You mess with the wrong one. You mess with the wrong one. You did. And hey, it's gonna be great when that comes back to bite you in the ass, man. So this is Exodus 21:16. It says, do we want to read up? No, it's good from here. Exodus 12, Slakia, 21:16, and he that stealeth a man and selleth him, or if he be found in his hands, he shall surely be put to death. So guess what? You wanted to go and steal a man out of a land. You wanted to go and sell him or do all these things. Guess what? You're going to be put to death, man. You're going to be put to death. And finally, Numbers 35 and 33, last but not least, one of my favorites. If I kept on saying that, it would just be the whole Bible, but you know how it is. But it is one of my favorites because I like this, because this is how this devil's going to have to be repaid. Check this out. Numbers 35 and 33. So ye shall not pollute the land wherein ye are, for blood it defileth the land, and the land cannot be cleansed of the blood that is shed therein, but by the blood of him that shed it. So if he was shedding all this slave blood, all right, of all of our blood, all right, the Negroes, so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, because most primarily it was the so-called Negroes like Judah, right? But just like it was with the Trail of Tears, you had Judites and that, and Issacharites and that. You had, Judites and Issacharites and Gadites all throughout the slave trade too, because just because they look like a so-called Negro don't mean that that's what they are. Don't mean that they're a Judite. All right, some of you brothers out there that look like a dark skin, what you would say is a Judite, you might go back to Gad. All right, you might even go back to Issachar or another nation. You'll hear the apostles talk about it from time to time. Is that we don't really necessarily know who we are. We can have an idea, all right, but we'll know for sure when we're in the kingdom. But you can't, again, because nothing's about skin color. If you go off that, then every white person's an Edomite, and that's just not the case. If you go off that, every person that looks like Wesley Snipes is an Israelite, and that's not true. All right, because you got some of those motherfuckers that are tares, Edomites, right? Ham, okay, might even be a Moabite, okay. You wonder why is this African dude, so good? Come over here, I will make some shrimp fried rice for you, and you're just like, what is this motherfucker? This Hamite's over here cooking shrimp fried rice. Shouldn't he making fufu? And you wonder why he's making shrimp fried rice? Because that motherfucker's a Moabite. All right, he's a Moabite. Okay, cooking Asian food. All right, because he's a Moabite. Okay, not that if you make Asian food you're a Moabite, but some of those Jakes, I call them anime ninjas, right? And that's what they are. They always have names something. It's the whitest name you ever heard on this Jake kid. They'll have names or they'll go by initial. I used to know this kid named JD, all right, and he was one of those anime ninjas, man. And I think that kid was a terror. And he was just weird, man. And they're like, have you seen the newest anime? It's really good, man. And they're they're only ever hanging out with white kids, all right. They always hang out with white kids. They're just weird.